Hello, horror fans, and welcome back to the Script to Screen podcast. Thanks for joining us. It's something a little bit different for you today. Myself and Lee are hugely excited to be joined by Brett Pierce, who is the co-writer and director of the wonderful film The Wretched, a film we're both huge fans of, Brett. Thanks so much for being with us. For gracing our podcast with your presence. I can't tell you how much we appreciate you being here.
Oh, of course. I love your guys' podcast, and I'm always happy to talk about the struggle of making horror movies.
Well, thanks so much. We really appreciate it. So before we get started, could you tell us a little bit about your history with horror and your sort of work in the genre prior to making The Wretched?
Yeah, I mean, probably since a kid, I've been fascinated with horror movies because my dad was the special effects artist on the original Evil Dead.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, and when I was really, really young, and my brother were like way too young, they were like finishing up all the special effects on that film pretty much in our basement in Detroit. So they scared the shit out of me. And I was like fascinated but terrified by horror. I wouldn't even watch it till I was like 13 or 14, I think. We had all these horror movies in the VHS cabinet, but I just wouldn't
Nice.
put them on. But then, got addicted as soon as I started getting brave enough to watch them. And then just wanted to make horror films, and we made terrible ones in high school with our buddies for no money. And then ultimately in like 2012, 2013, we took our first swing at it. We made a zombie buddy road trip comedy called Deadheads, and it was, very low budget, couple $100,000, but we did pretty well with it. And after making that, we were flat broke. We went and got real jobs again. And we were like, man, I really like movies and I hate working for other people. Um,
Yeah.
so I started writing Wretched before work at my job at the time. I'd go in at 5 in the morning and write till like 7 or 8 and then do the job. And we just got Wretched one put together and then shot that. So it's been both of them have been totally homegrown, just kind of put together by my brother and myself. So
It's amazing.
yeah,
Fantastic.
yeah,
Absolutely fantastic. I mean, I know you can't offer any spoilers or anything, but how
yeah.
how is the sequel coming along? I mean, whereabouts are you in
It's
that kind of process?
going really well. We shoot in, oh man, this is going to scare me when I say it. In about 2.5, 3 months,
Oh
we start
wow.
Wow.
shooting. Yeah, yeah, yeah. We start casting tomorrow, so that's going to be real exciting.
Mhm.
But we've been storyboarding all the effects sequences because things are be starting to be built. Our actress who plays the wretch got into town today because she's going to start doing all her molds and scans tomorrow, so we can, make her the wretch again. So we're kind of like we're in the thick of it.
Oh,
That's so
amazing.
cool.
Yeah.
Did you use the same actress as the previous film or?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. She was
Oh,
great.
fantastic.
Yeah, her name's Madeline Stunkel, and she's
Yes, I remember.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Madeline's wonderful. She's just so good at doing all the creature actions and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
The
And
physicality of it was amazing, I thought.
Mhm.
yeah, yeah, it's a real skill. Like I think people don't realize that you could put somebody in the coolest looking like monster suit or get up in the world, and they just move like like your grandpa or something. It just doesn't look right.
Yeah,
Kind
yeah.
of thing. But Madeline just really, really sells it. So I recommend her all the time whenever I have friends doing anything with creatures. I'm like, you want somebody that looks like a creature? Get Madeline in there. So.
Brilliant.
Amazing. So
Mhm.
before we crack on with the script questions
Yeah.
themselves, I do feel kind of compelled to ask, what were the horror movies that inspired you kind of growing up? And is there anything you've seen recently that you'd recommend to our listeners?
Um, what inspired me the most is probably John Carpenter's Halloween. It's like always a staple. It's probably why we shot The Wretched on anamorphic lenses.
Right, right.
So, yeah, it was used as an example for everything. The original Fright Night shouldn't be a surprise with what The Wretched feels like too.
Yeah,
Um, and those are probably the two that have, I would say, affected me the most. But like Alien and Aliens have a big effect.
yeah, me too. Yeah.
Yeah, weirdly, Wretched 2 is very much inspired by Aliens a little bit. So,
Yeah.
Ah, okay.
yeah,
Interesting.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But recently, oh man, here's the worst part is when you start getting into production, you don't watch anything because you
Yeah,
don't have
sure.
time. So I'm trying to think of a horror. Oh, well, it was okay. Yeah, I'm trying to think of a good one I've seen recently, and I can't think because I can't remember the last horror movie I saw in the theater. It's probably been a while. So yeah,
No
I'm
problem.
like, when evil lurks, that was amazing, but that was a while ago. So
That's a good one.
it's
That's a
great.
very good one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I love
great,
that one.
great.
I love
Yeah,
that one.
yeah,
Okay. So talking script, if we may. So one of the things that kind of struck us when we compared the script and the film was the backstory of Ben's drug addiction had been
yeah,
kind of toned down quite a lot.
yeah.
And I was just wondering if you could kind of elaborate as to why you chose to do that.
I think when we wrote it, we thought it was kind of an important driver for the main character.
Hmm.
And weirdly, it was in the movie for quite a long time, but towards the very end, we had been accepted into the Fantasia Film Festival, so we were playing in a couple of months. And I had a friend of mine named Matthew Curry Holmes, who's also a horror filmmaker and writer. And he watched the movie, and we had this large scene that really addressed it between Ben and his father, and they
Yeah.
kind of argue in this car. And it was a really good scene. Both the actors did a fantastic job. And but he watched the movie, my friend Matt, and he said, like, if you get rid of that scene, this movie's first act is just going to move much faster. It's going to feel a lot better. And Drew and I's immediate reaction was, yeah, but then you've kind of broken our story. It doesn't, the motivation isn't there for the
Yeah.
problem between him and his father. And then the next day we looked at it and we cut it out and we watched it and we were like, well, God damn it, he's totally right. You
It's a
know?
great call.
Yeah, yeah. We were always, I think, and honestly, I don't know what, it'd be hard for me to remember what's in that script sometimes because we reorganized, especially with the first act. There was a lot done in the edit to kind of make it work or a different sequence of events for some things. And it's the thing you always learn every time you make a movie is the thing you mess around with the most in the edit is your first act. So that's where you
Mhm.
lose a lot of stuff, you jumble stuff around just because you're always trying to try and make everything work for everybody. Like one of the early notes we got on the script, because I think originally the first horror scene was with Abby and her son in the woods.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And we that did open the movie for a little bit, and the mistake everybody took is everybody goes, oh, Abby's the main character, she's the main
Yeah.
character of the story. So we realized we had to get that out of starting off the movie because everybody had to focus on Ben. And we had also shot the movie and realized by moving that we didn't have a horror sequence anymore to start the movie, so we went and wrote what is the open of the movie totally separately and did that as a pickup. So
Right. But it was like an editing decision rather than a sort of a script.
yeah, yeah. And I think in hindsight, like it's sometimes you don't want to weigh your characters down by too much of a sad backstory. It can kind of make them unappealing, even if you think it's like something that makes you like them more, you know?
Yeah.
So I
Mhm.
think by removing it, it made Ben a little less of a mope in a good way, you know? So
Yeah.
it's something you learn and you always think like, I need the dramatics of the characters, horrible backstory is like, their whole family died in a car crash, but sometimes that's not what you really want to start with. If you don't see it, it kind of doesn't matter that much,
Yeah,
So
sure.
yeah.
Sure. Well, one of the things we found certainly most impressive about the script and the film is the way the twist of Ben's forgotten brother is kind of subtly woven in.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting for us to see, even in the shooting script, the twist is kept hidden until the moment of the reveal. How did you guys go about crafting that twist in the Wretched? Because it's so well balanced.
Oh, it was I mean it was a challenge. It was one we in the writing and also in the edit we argued about in a good way about like
Mm,
how to make it work best. And one of the things you kind of run into is and we're still torn on it sometimes. Did we with a twist, you almost kind of want to tip it off enough that maybe about 25% of your audience like catches on, you know?
yeah,
It's
yeah,
kind of okay if like 25% catch on and then everybody else is just like, "Oh my God, I didn't see it coming at all." But if you kind of go less than that, sometimes the twist happens, everyone goes, huh? What?
yeah, yeah,
Kind of type thing. So we went back and forth all the time of how much to put in to kind of support the twist, what to yank out. And even to this day, sometimes Drew and it's weird. We'll think about like, well, maybe we should have just tipped it off 5% more or maybe 5% less. I don't know. It's filmmakers
yeah,
are never satisfied with what they did. So, so
yeah. Sure. Did
yeah.
sort of screenings help with that at all? Did sort of any previews or anything like that help?
Yeah, we screened to a lot of friends and other filmmakers and some random people, just like audiences we could put together to see what people thought of it. And I mean, the honest reaction is most everybody really liked it, so we were really happy with that. But it was really fun to do. It was really fun in the screenwriting to go back and kind of pick your spots where you wanted to breadcrumb. And we always try to you try to breadcrumb and like knock somebody over the head with something weird, like hinting at the brother very early in the movie, so that when you get to the end, they've kind of forgotten.
Yeah.
Something happens, they're like, "Oh, what a great surprise!" If you hint at it too hard, like midway through, and then it happens, you're like, "Well, it's not as much of a surprise," you know. It's
Yeah,
like,
sure.
so it's a weird, yeah, it's weird math that you're doing, but it's I don't know, it was fun. That was one of the things we were most excited about when we started working on it. And it was a late idea in the script, like her forget making people forget their children. And it
Oh,
was,
wow.
yeah, it was born out of just us having a hard time writing the story, going like, well, everybody's going to notice that these kids are gone. How do they not notice the kids are gone? And then I
Yeah.
think it was my brother. He's like, what if she makes them forget? And I was like, what? And I was like, wait a minute. It's like that's a great idea.
The genius.
So yeah, yeah, and it kind of gave us our twist, and kind of that's when the movie really came into focus.
Oh,
So
amazing.
yeah,
You know, I mean, I think you nailed it like perfectly. I mean, I honestly really do. I think you nailed it spot on because me and Will were talking about this the other day, and we're like, if there'd just been like, I don't know, like if the characters had just looked a little bit confused at times, or like double takes or anything like that, I think it would have just sort of given it away. You know, I think it was
yeah,
just sublimely well done.
that makes me really happy. So
Ah, no.
yeah, yeah,
So we've kind of covered this already just a minute ago, but obviously the first acts of the shooting script and the film they play out in a very significantly different kind of order. And as you
yeah,
said, this is something that you kind of decided after you'd shot all the scenes initially.
yeah, yeah. Well, it was just that it was kind of from testing the film.
Hmm.
I think you know, to be totally honest, like we fell into in early scenes, we fell into some of the horror tropes of, oh, it's a fish out of water, kid's at a new place.
Yeah.
We're gonna watch him get to his dad's house and go up into his bedroom and look out off the deck, and we're gonna have all these scenes of kind of settling him in this place. But the other thing we've kind of learned and had to learn is like, telling horror stories is people have seen, they've seen a lot of movies and they've seen a lot of stories play out. There's some things you can kind of skip now just because you've seen it so many times. And one of those things was I don't have to do the fish out of water thing with Ben for as long as I thought I had to do. I don't have to set up everything about his situation with being here like maybe a movie did 10, 15 years ago. It's just because people are sharp and they kind of can make those assumptions a little quicker. So unless it's something unique or different, you can kind of just say, yep, he just got here and he's got beef with his dad. And then we can kind of get into the story, you know?
Yeah.
So
There's an audience literacy there, I guess, isn't there, that you can sort of utilize?
yeah, yeah. Well, I think it's just from us, all of us watching so many movies. Like we just see it as a language that we're familiar with. So sometimes you kind of write it in there, and then you look at it later, and you're kind of like, oh, yeah, I don't need that. I can make that assumption, you know.
Yeah,
So
sure.
it's like, yeah,
Amazing. So, I mean, the Wretched Hag, I mean, it feels very organic and sort of very grounded, despite, having these obvious kind of witchy vibes.
yeah.
Were you ever tempted to make her kind of more of a magical threat, through kind of spells or anything like that? Or is that something you're considering maybe now as a way of evolving the character?
I think not really. Drew and I really we like rules with our creatures and monsters and
Mm,
supernatural stuff because it kind of creates interesting situations that make people think like, how would I survive? It's, like I brought up Alien and Aliens before is, they stick an egg in you that ingests, they have acid for blood. All these things kind of create cool sequences that are based around those rules. So I think with the Wretch, we were just like, I like that she wears people's skins. I like that she plays house and pretends to be these people. But maybe when she's on the inside of these things, she starts to rot a little or things feel a little off. So that might be a tell. I like that people's ears bleed when she's kind of invaded their mind. That's a tip off that somebody's not not with it and under the sway of the Wretch.
yeah.
I like those things more. It's when you make like when you write like a ghost story, it's a little different. You kind of get to do whatever,
Yeah, yeah.
which is a little strange and fun, but at the same time, I think it's why it's very hard, and people have done it, but it's very hard to wrap up a good ghost story ending because it's kind of like, well, how do you defeat it? Because you don't really know its limitations most of the time. Or sometimes its
Yeah.
limitations is like, its soul is trapped in its, dead rotting body that's in the floorboards. We got to just dig it up and destroy it or something. But that always feels almost a little too like convenient story kind of type thing. So it's like I like when we have a rule just because it's a way for people to kind of track and judge how they could survive this if they were in the situation too.
That's great.
That's
Yeah.
brilliant. That's brilliant. I mean, one of the things that struck Will and me about the Wretched was kind of like the visual punch that it packs. I mean, I know you've said about how important storyboarding is to your process, and that you'll kind of compare the script and the storyboards to see what works and in one and not in the other. I just didn't know if maybe you could kind of elaborate on that kind of comparison process a little bit for us.
Yeah, I mean, it's helpful for us because I'm co-writing with my brother. And like when you're co-writing, as much as you imagine these sequences together, when you're kind of writing, you quickly realize like, oh, I'm visualizing a completely different, living room where this fight's taking place or something like that. And
Hmm.
the storyboarding process really helps out with like what you're actually going to see, helps you eliminate things that you're like, oh, I don't the best part actually one of the things we realized recently even doing the Wretched 2 stuff is it helps us eliminate things that are very tough to do that aren't the coolest thing in the scene. It's like I don't need this stunt where somebody gets, thrown into this cabinet because this gore effect is kind of the ace thing about this scene. So let's figure out how to like pare this stuff down. But it's more about just like visually telling the story in the way that where everything can feel like a reveal or a twist or a turn. It's what we're going to try to do with the second one actually, and it was a limitation of time and money, but we're probably going to have a lot more camera movement in the second movie than we did
Okay,
in the
that's interesting. Yeah.
yeah. But it's just our process. We just love we want a good plan going in because we want to make sure we can pull off the movie that's in our heads, and the storyboard process sometimes tells you like, oh, there's something here that just doesn't work until you get like forced to kind of try to make it work.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
great. So, I mean, The Wretched is such a well-structured film. I wondered if you could talk a little bit about how important you think structure is generally, but also how you go about structuring your films kind of prior to or kind of during the writing process. What's your process with regards to structure?
It's well, usually we kind of usually I write the first draft, and it works out the way where like my brother and I will brainstorm for months and just
Mhm.
it's a weird process, but we'll just kind of like try to write bullet points of what the story is. Like on a piece of paper, we'll just draw a dash, this happens, dash, next scene. And we'll keep rewriting that list over and over again for months until we almost can both write it. And we always start over at the beginning and we move things around. And as soon as we kind of get that loose breakdown to a pretty good place where it's filled in enough, but not too much, because I get a little frustrated when I feel like it's all locked in. That's
Right.
stupid. Getting it figured out is very important. but well, I usually take it and I'm like, okay, leave me alone. I'm gonna write like a shit version in like 6 weeks. Like we're just gonna get a version on paper.
The vomit draft.
Yeah. It's really helpful though. And like I have no ego about it anymore. I'm like, we're just gonna have a version so we can look at something and say, I like this, don't like this. That's not working at all. This is pretty cool. I didn't know we were gonna do that.
Mm,
And that's what we did with the first movie. That's what we're doing with the second movie. And then we just really buckle down on it. It's usually we just kind of start taking it apart. We start really adhering to structure at that point, actually, more than the first draft. I mean, naturally structures in our brains a little bit when you tell a story, but the real key is my brother and I will just listen to screenwriting podcasts constantly where people break down structures of scripts, and it'll be all different types of stuff. But it constantly gives you this feed of idea of how to fix your story, and
Yeah.
it's awesome. We just kind of keep picking at it and keep picking at it and keep moving things around. We keep working to. I mean, we're still like we've been happy with the Wretched 2 script for like 4 months now, like in a really good spot. But I just rewrote 2 scenes because I thought of some things and we talked it over. Like that's a little bit better. That's a little bit better. So we're always massaging, always trying to make something work a
Yeah.
little better. And it's natural. It's like every time you write something, I feel like such a better writer since I wrote the first one. So I'd be very curious to actually read Wretched 1 now, compare the draft to Wretched 2. So yeah.
great.
That's awesome. That's so
Yeah.
cool. I mean, were there any sort of elements that you had to leave out of the original that you sort of plan to utilize in the sequel?
Oh, the sequel is packed with things that either didn't fit that we loved or just got bumped out because, we couldn't figure out a way to do it. But yeah, two is kind of like, yeah, it's just full of things. I don't want to spoil it. It's full of things that we really wanted to do in the first movie.
Yeah.
So
That's
there's a
great.
lot of, I would say every horror sequence, yeah, there's a good 3 or 4 horror sequences where things that we tried to work in the first movie that just either ended up not fitting the story or maybe were too demanding on the budget that we had at the time. So
That's awesome.
yeah.
Lee and I are sort of planning on collaborating on a script fairly soon as well. So,
Oh,
do
cool.
you have any kind of advice, when it comes to writing a feature
Yeah.
in collaboration with someone else, any of the sort of pitfalls or best practices that we should be aware of before we kind of start?
Um, yeah, I mean, it's weird for me because I write with my brother and I feel like we share the same brain. I think what's okay is like it's don't jump on anybody's idea that you don't like too quickly.
Mhm.
Like if you're just at the point where you're like sometimes like myself or my brother has a hard time kind of spitting out changing something, an idea to change something, and they're kind of excited about it, but they're not expressing it in the best way. And it's sometimes my fault. I'll be like, nah, I don't like what you're saying. I don't like what that is, and stuff like. And some of those, like, I've realized that, like, I kind of got to sit back for a minute and let him think about it for a little bit, and then like let's talk about it over a couple of days because it might get refined and maybe better explained to me what he's trying to accomplish. Because a lot of those things make their way back into the movie, and I'm like, oh man, now I love this. But if I would have kind of been the way I used to be right off the bat, I would have like nixed it before he really kind of was able to express it correctly, and stuff. So it's like, I guess it's just like kind of like at the point where you're kind of brainstorming stuff, just be like really easy on each other and don't worry about if something you think breaks the story. I mean, I'm always like, if he suggests something and I'm like, but that breaks like 9 other things, you kind of got to be like, that's fine. Just
Yeah.
that's the idea first. Cause sometimes you're like, yeah, it does break all these things, but it's totally worth doing, because now it's made something so cool,
Yeah.
just something works so much better for a character or something like that. So
Do you know if the sequel is going to get a cinematic release, or is it going straight to streamers? Or
we don't know. I mean, one of the things we're kind of, I mean, and I'm excited about this is Drew and I have luckily been kind of like the masters of our own destiny with the Wretched and the Wretched
yeah,
2. We retained the rights to the first movie, so
yeah,
we've put this together. We're talking to people about distribution, but I honestly, we just want to go make it first because we're so proud and excited about the script, and we're so
yeah,
excited to make this one because it just feels like we're just doing exactly what we want to do.
yeah,
That I would rather finish it first and show it to people rather than make the deal ahead of time because I just feel like we might be able to get a better release if we finish it first.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
yeah. So ideally, what we're aiming for is theaters, yes.
Yeah.
But
Awesome.
we won't know that until I don't know, maybe sometime next year. So
Yeah. I mean, in regards to the original, do you think obviously it was released kind of right when kind of COVID hit? I
yeah.
mean, and obviously that affected the box office, but in a strange way, do you think that kind of sort of helped the film in a way because it obviously
Oh,
was the number one for such a long time?
yeah, I think it definitely did. I mean, I don't like to ever say like, man, I'm so glad COVID came along and helped me
No,
out,
of course.
helped our movie out,
Yeah.
but it definitely did. It
Yeah.
was we were supposed to originally come out in 15 theaters the same day Black Widow was coming out, kind of,
Yeah.
and it was, we probably would have been in the theater a couple of weeks and maybe we would have gotten lucky, who knows? But,
Mm.
like most independent movies come out and they last a couple of weeks and they're lucky if they make $200,000,
Yeah.
kind of thing. So I think it definitely helped out. The way it really helped actually though is all this press coverage and all this stuff, they didn't have other movies to cover, and they
Yeah.
saw this like horror movie coming out that everybody was reviewing well, and they're like, hey, there's something to talk about,
Yeah.
so it made it really really advantageous for us. And Drew and I, when we're working with IFC, we just gave them like a list of every podcast we would go on, listed newspapers in our hometown and whatever, and they were adding, IFC was doing a great job of turning people towards our way too, just anybody that would talk to us about it, because we were just like, yeah, maybe this can be something. I don't know yet. I'm really proud of the movie, and I think it's also like it was like a really good, fun summer drive-in movie, and they put it in drive-ins, and I just think that was a really good match. I mean, everyone always asks us like, well, how'd you do it? And I'm kind of like, well, one, we just tried to make the best movie we possibly could.
Yeah.
And then two, a lot of crazy things out of our control had to happen. Like IFC had to pick us up. And then, maybe COVID adjusted things where we got way more attention than we normally would. But coming out of that, like because we were number one at the drive-ins, Good Morning America put us on TV about it,
Mm.
like a whole story, and that brought a lot of attention too. So I mean, yeah, it's a mix of all those things, and most of it's stuff you can't control other than putting your head down and just trying to, you know, take your script you think is good and turn it into an even better movie.
Yeah.
So
That's
Brilliant.
awesome. I mean,
yeah.
if you were writing, I mean, if for example, if you knew it was going straight to Netflix or something like that, would you change the script at all to like with streaming viewers in mind, or would you kind of keep
Well,
it
I
as is?
mean, we've like the only thing we've ever talked about like with that, and we always throw it out ultimately is we're like, oh, would we shoot not as wide of an aspect ratio,
Mm.
because
Yeah.
Netflix is usually like not like 2:3:9 like our movie.
Yeah.
Um, But I'm always like, yeah, but I just want to shoot the movie the way I think it's going to look best. I don't want to worry about like somebody's specifications of how they like their movies to look, kind of, it just seems like
Yeah.
a silly consideration. But yeah, not really. I mean, the real consideration for us just every time is like, how how can we make this scene better? How can we make this movie better? Like even doing when we got into doing Wretched 2 is like, I love the first movie. I want to make an even better movie. That's the point, is like get better at what you're doing and just like try to really make the movie that you really want to see. You can't really aim for what other people want. You just got to aim for what you
Yeah.
want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah.
Me and Lee really kind of love to dig in and do deep dives on themes in films and
Yeah.
scripts. I was really interested to sort of find out when you kind of start considering the themes of your projects and what role that plays in kind of both crafting the script, but also in the actual making of the film.
Yeah. I think it's usually for us, I've always had difficulty because sometimes we've sat down before we've like written a first draft and like, what's the theme of this movie? And I think that was a little bit of a mistake on our parts because I think what you do is you kind of need to write that vomit draft. And usually in that vomit draft, you got like five or six themes you're trying to work, and you
Mhm.
can tell there's certain things you're interested in, but you're not sure which one's the leader yet.
Yeah.
I think we always kind of feel like we find the theme on the second or third draft, and it's usually because there's like five or six things competing for what that theme is a little bit. And sometimes like some of them tie together and work really well together, and some of them you're like, yeah, this is kind of a narrative dead end. As much as I like some of this idea, it's just not totally working in here, and we start abandoning those and throwing them off. It's just, yeah, I'm always curious about other writers because it feels like a lot of the screenwriting books and the advice is always about like determining your theme first. But I find that really difficult because the
Mm.
first thing I think about is like, what's the concept I like that I find interesting, and what
Yeah.
kind of character would fit well in that concept? What's an interesting story I could tell to somebody? And that's usually when the themes kind of start coming out, is when I figure out who that person is in that story. And I mean, ultimately, most of the themes usually end up being something that you're going through your personal life because you kind of just, accidentally write it in there a little bit. So,
Yeah.
like,
It just comes out naturally, right?
yeah, it just happens. Yeah, it just happens. It's funny.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's really interesting. It's interesting as well because we were sort of talking. It's interesting to hear that the idea of people forgetting their children came along late, because when we were
Yeah,
watching and talking about the film,
yeah,
that sort of idea of young of kind of kids being concerned about being forgotten, when their parents are kind of going through this kind of divorce process, was something
yeah.
that came through really strongly.
Oh, and that's what became the theme. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's amazing, right?
Like
And
good
it's
on. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
organically came through later on in the process.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's most of the best things that come out of the script usually come out of us having a problem that we're having a hard time solving. So,
Oh, amazing.
yeah. Yeah.
Okay, well, so I mean, I guess it's a kind of ubiquitous kind of question that you probably get asked quite a bit. But the last question that we have is really, do you have any kind of advice for aspiring screenwriters out there, especially kind of people interested in breaking into the horror genre?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think the biggest thing is just, vet your concept on anyone and anybody that will listen to you. And I think I've realized that, like, Drew and I do this all the time. Like, once we start writing something, we start telling all our friends who don't care about filmmaking, who aren't even into it, or like even our parents, we try to like explain the script we're writing to them in like 2 to 5 minutes. And it's always we're terrible at it for like the first 6 months or a year, and it kind of sounds like it's about too many different things or whatever. And then as you're writing and the script's getting better and blah blah, you'll find that you're still doing this, and then one time you'll finally tell somebody, and you're like, well, that sounds like a pretty good goddamn movie, you know? And then you kind of know, you're like, my script's working, my idea's working, my characters are working. It's all kind of locked in. So that's always been our thing. Is, I mean, I tested on my mom, who like probably doesn't understand half the things I'm talking about all the time, but I'm like, it's about this kid who goes and lives, you know, and as soon as they get it, you just know you're kind of onto something that's going to work. So
That's great.
yeah.
Fantastic.
Fantastic.
Well, that's about all we've got time for. I know, we want to sort of let you get going. We don't want to keep you all day, but we
Oh,
could
no
certainly
worries.
chat all day.
Well, it was really good meeting you guys.
You as well. Again,
Yeah.
thank you so
Thank you
much.
so
Yeah,
much,
no
Brett.
worries. Like I said, if you ever need anything, and happy to talk. And after we make Wretched too, if you want to, well, I'll probably be all gray and falling over, but we talk more.
Oh, we'd definitely love to do an episode on Wretched too. Absolutely.
Okay, cool. Well, I'll tell you guys one thing cool about it nobody knows. It's not called the Wretched 2. It's called the Wretched
Oh,
Devours. So
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
I like quite a bit.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome.
Cool. All right.
Again, thank
brilliant.
you so much. And
All right.
all the best with Wretched too, and give
Yeah,
our
best
best to
of
Drew
luck.
as well.
I will. I will.
I can't thank you enough for coming on, Brett. I really appreciate it. We love the movie.
Anytime, guys. Yeah. Thank you for
Great
reading
to
the
sort of
script.
pick your brains about it,
Yeah.
and your process and everything. So, just from me and from Lee, thank you so much for coming on. Thanks for your time.
Yeah,
Thank you
anytime.
so much. It's been
Good luck
fantastic.
writing together, guys.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah, try not to kill each other.
We'll try.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Yeah, no worries.
Okay, well there we go then, Lee. So that was Brett Pierce there. Thanks so much for for Brett for doing that. I mean, it's so generous of him to come out and give his time and give his thoughts and answer all of our questions about the script for The Wretched and about the movie. Can't say thank you enough. I really enjoyed that. So we had a couple of thoughts about what Brett said, and we thought we'd just have a little roundup of some of the points that we thought were maybe quite salient within that kind of interview there. And the first thing I thought was really this concept of being able to do a vomit draft, when you're initially writing a script and when you've got the first idea, just it's important to be able to, I think, to kind of have no ego and be open to just allowing your creativity to flow within that first draft and just get something down on page. And, I sort of generally call this a vomit draft. I think most other people do, but that was interesting. I thought that Brett was kind of saying, he will generally do a first draft of their screenplays. Obviously, Drew will then come in and do some more. But yeah, really cool sort of piece of advice there about not having much ego and just getting something on the page.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, just getting something on paper is worth so much more than just because everyone has ideas in their head. I've got billions of ideas in my head, but when they're in your head, they're in your head. No one else can see them. No one else can read them. You can't kind of read them. But once you've got something on paper, then no matter how terrible it is, you can make it better and you can make it better and you can make it better and you can get feedback on it and you can make it better. And it's, I don't think anyone ever just sits down, writes a script and then it's perfect. That's doesn't happen. Like I said, write without ego, just get something on the page. I mean, procrastination is a killer for me. So I want to always make sure I've got everything planned out and before I start writing. And sometimes I wait too long. I could have started like a month back, but I'm just like, now I've got to make sure it's going to be perfect before I start. But yeah, just start writing as soon as you've got a plan in place, as soon as you've got your structure down, your step outline, and then just start writing. Because once it's down there, once you've started it, once you've got something on that page to look at and to contribute to, even if you just do a little bit a day, it's going to mount up, and sooner or later you're going to have a finished script. It's just about consistency and perseverance and dedication, and just keep coming back, doing a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. You might be able to just sit and do like 20 pages a day. You might only be able to do 1 or 2 pages a day, but it's better to do 1 or 2 pages a day 5 days a week than doing 20 pages every couple of weeks. It's
Yeah,
just keeping
absolutely.
that momentum going, I think.
Yeah. And I think it's just obviously it's not to say don't have a plan going in. It's really good, as you say, to kind of
Mm,
have a plan and decide on where the sort of maybe the conflicts are within each scene or where the conflicts are in terms of your arc and having an arc and all of that sort of stuff and understanding, your structure to a certain degree. But definitely, I think just allowing your kind of creativity to flow on that first draft and don't sort of go in thinking, oh, this has to be perfect. And that can kind of be paralyzing, I think, sometimes. I've certainly found that when I've been writing that
yeah.
you're sort of worried about this first draft being amazing, and
Mm.
I think it's a great piece of advice from Brett just to kind of get it down, get it out, don't worry about it. And then, like you say, you can get some feedback and you can start chipping away at things.
Yeah, writing is rewriting, as they say. I never
Absolutely.
really realized quite how true that was until I really sort of started getting into screenwriting. But there's no truer statement about screenwriting than that. Writing is rewriting.
I mean, the other thing I thought that was really interesting that Brett sort of mentioned was we talked a little bit about Ben's drug backstory and his addiction backstory and how that was obviously present in the script, but it's sort of over time, was diminished a little bit within the
Mm.
actual film itself. It's obviously in there and referenced at certain points, but I thought it was interesting that he was sort of saying possibly what you think may work on the page when you're sort of initially writing your protagonist and your protagonist needing some sort of arc that can come back and sort of maybe hinder that protagonist at a later stage, when the film's being made, when you're actually watching the film back in your sort of edit process.
Yeah, that was a perspective I've not really given a lot of thought about. So it must be one of the really cool perks of being writer directors, because you have that kind of control of your story right up until it goes to final print, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought that was a really cool kind of sage piece of wisdom there,
Mm.
to maybe not load up your protagonist with too much because it may just hinder their likability maybe in
Yeah.
some ways. So it's just worth being conscious of that, I think. And it was really nice to hear a little bit about collaborating as well. Obviously, Brett does write with his brother Drew and hearing a little bit about their process. And I thought what was really nice to hear was just if you're going into a collaborating space where you're working with maybe one or two other writers on a project, is just really being open to all ideas as they come in and not jumping on anyone's ideas too soon,
Mm.
giving
Yeah.
yourself a bit of space, a bit of time to sit with an idea, think about it a little bit, contemplate it, and just don't jump down anyone's throat too quickly when you're being a bit generous when you're writing with someone.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great piece of advice, because we all kind of have a set vision of our story, and when people try to change it, sometimes it's almost kind of puts you on the defensive a little bit. You're like,
It
well,
can.
hang on a
Yeah,
minute.
yeah, yeah.
Hang on a minute. I've planned this whole thing out. I know what's going to happen. If we change it here, it's going to mess things up later. But like you said, if you just kind of let it sit for a while, I mean, it may well not work at all, but sometimes it might just kind of click something in your head and you'll think, okay, yeah, actually, it will change quite a bit of the story, but the story will be infinitely better because of it. So, let's go ahead, let's do that.
Yeah, and you never know what those kind of ideas are going to spark, in terms
Mm,
of moving forward. Yeah, it may require changes, but,
yeah,
I mean, it could be an amazing change that will make the project better, and you may get lots of, great ideas off the back of it. So I think it's allowing yourself to kind of sit with those ideas and definitely not jump on people's ideas too soon, just
yeah,
being generous in
absolutely.
that way. I mean, the other thing I really enjoyed talking about with Brett was with regards to theme because I
Mm,
think, this is something that can maybe trip up writers a little bit when they're sort of writing their scripts. And I think theme is, it's one of those things that you can either have a really fixed idea on when you're sort of starting out and when you're sort of conceptualizing your film. But it's interesting that Brett said that the theme for this movie really came sort of later in the process. And I think it's interesting for me because I sort of generally will start with an idea or a concept in sort of general terms and build out from that and have a general idea about, well, I kind of know what I want to say or what this project is doing. But quite often, themes will come up organically and they're not
yeah,
necessarily what you first imagined the theme of your project is going to be. So I think being open to allow themes to be found as you're writing a script is a really cool piece of advice there from Brett.
Yeah, I kind of work in a similar way. We were always taught, zero in on your theme quite early on, and then it will kind of guide the rest of the film. So it was really eye-opening to see how Brett was just kind of like, yeah, the theme comes at some point down the road, as we're going, it'll kind of make itself clear. And I was just kind of like, wow, that's a
That's a
that's a
different way.
very sort of laid back approach to theme. I've never even kind of thought of doing it that way. But I mean, in hindsight, there's been lots of times in my writing where I've zeroed in on a theme quite late in the story and kind
Yeah.
of had to go back and then kind of seed that theme into earlier scenes. And it's
Yeah,
not
me too.
that difficult to do, really. I mean, it's not doesn't usually require any massive plot shifts or anything, just some, little manipulation of certain points earlier in the film. I was really sort of bowled away by just like how chilled out he was about like getting
Yeah.
your thing locked in and that.
And I think we've spoken before in previous episodes about going back and doing sort of targeted rewrites, and so
Mm,
maybe that's something that you could do with something like a theme. If you've
yeah,
come to something a bit later in your writing process and you've got a theme down a little bit later, you can go back and actually do a bit of a sort of a tweak and a targeted rewrite about seeding that theme earlier on in the film, maybe.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. The other thing I thought was really interesting, Brett was talking about putting the protagonist front and center. He was mentioning that one of the initial scenes, I think, or the initial scare was actually Abby and Dylan in the forest. And when they were doing some testing on the film, it sort of became apparent that people thought the film was about Abby, and
Yeah.
Abby was the protagonist. So I thought that was really interesting. And I think they added the cold open afterwards. Yeah, I didn't know what your thoughts were on that.
Yeah, I mean, I can absolutely see why that would have been the case. Because normally, like I say, your film will open with the protagonist, or it will open with horror films usually with a cold open, in which
Mm.
case someone is usually dispatched in a gory fashion by the monster that our protagonist will later on face. But by having Abby and Dylan kind of with that opening scare and then not killing them straight away, does kind of make you think, okay, so these guys must be our protagonists. So then suddenly shifting to Ben after that would definitely kind of be a little bit confusing for people, and it would feel a little bit like it's jumping around somewhat. Whereas the way it was handled in the film, cold open introduces the antagonistic force. Then we meet Ben. Then we see Abby, and the antagonist is reintroduced, and we kind of know what it is now. We know how dangerous it is, and so it just kind of all feeds in better. It kind of structures a lot better, and it just shows the value of a really good cold open as well, especially in horror
Mm.
movies.
Yeah, yeah. I thought it was really interesting to sort of hear how that process kind of organically, you kind of go through that process of structuring that opening to bring your protagonist to the fore. And I think it's really cool to hear sort of Brett talk
Mm,
about that process and say, well, maybe we kind of, it wasn't clear right at the start, and we had to sort of tweak things to make
yeah,
our protagonist a bit clearer and bring it to the fore. Like you say, those cold opens, I mean, they can be so useful, right, for introducing that antagonistic force early doors, and then sort of coming back to it a couple of scenes down the line, once you've got your
yeah.
protagonist established. I think that's a really cool notion, certainly for horror screenwriters or people sort of wanting to write horror movies. I think it's really cool. I enjoyed about crafting that twist as well. I mean, obviously this
Mm,
film has an amazing twist,
pretty good.
and he was sort of saying it's great to kind of lay enough breadcrumbs, to make that twist feel earned.
Yeah,
Mentioned around about sort of 25% of people maybe get it, around about 75% of people probably don't, on that initial viewing. And that's about the right sort of levels in terms of people getting it and not. I thought that was really cool.
that was really cool. I would kind of venture that less than 25% of people got that twist though, because I mean, everyone I've spoken to or watched the film with, no one's kind of sussed that twist out. Like, everyone's been like, "Whoa!" So either I'm on the low end of the IQ scale, which is quite possible, as is like my social group, or he just crafted it a little bit better than what they give themselves credit for. But yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I've spoken a lot on how great this twist is. So I won't sort of prattle on about it too much. But yeah, it is fantastically well done.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I thought last thing I thought was really interesting to hear Brett talk about was structure. You know, he sort of was saying that what they'll do is obviously get sort of a good draft down and or get a draft down and then sort of start honing in on structure, listening to sort of screenwriting podcasts and you know sort of start to chip away at their structure in that way. But there was no kind of hint of having an initial sort of blueprint for a film structure in place
Yeah.
to start with, you know. So I thought that was really interesting, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it just goes to show there is no one way to write a screenplay. You know, everyone
Yeah,
will do things quite different. I mean, we've been taught about the effectiveness of thorough planning, which I'm a strong believer in. You know,
yeah, me too.
premise, treatment, step outline, and then first draft, kind of going from there, and spending a lot of time getting that treatment just really, really nailed in. You know, which will sort of help prevent a lot of problems in the long run. But I mean, the first couple of scripts that I wrote, I just sat down and wrote them, and they just kind of came to me as
Yeah.
I was writing. You know, I had no idea what was going to happen next. I just kind of worked it out as I went along, and it was a really fun way to write. But one of my first scripts I ever wrote, I think it worked out to be something like nearly 160 pages. So I had to like cut 50 pages off of it to
Yeah.
make it even, you know, remotely readable to any poor son of a bitch who was going to sit down and offer me feedback on it. But it still remains like one of my favorite scripts to this day, and I'm still kind of working on it and tweaking it. And
Yeah, amazing.
you know, it's probably never ever going to get made because it's such a ridiculous like premise, and it's so like it would be so expensive to make. But it's kind of like my dream project that I'll always kind of just have on the back burner and never quite chuck out. You know.
You'll have to keep us posted on that one, Lee. Keep us posted.
Yeah,
Tell us
yeah,
how you're getting along with it. We'll check in periodically, see how you're
yeah,
doing. Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, it's interesting on structure, isn't it? Because I thought one of the things I read, I think it was possibly in Blake Snyder's book, was about this idea of having, if you have a really good structure when you're sort of writing your screenplay and you've really kind of thought about it and, like you say, kind of planned it out, you know, like the process that we both use, I think now,
Mm,
you know, in terms of planning that story out, is that, you know, there's less need for kind of, well, possibly less need for rewrites later on, you know,
yeah,
when people start looking at your script and start making suggestions and saying, well, how about we take this out or put this in, you know, that kind of pulls at the threads of the actual screenplay itself and the structure of the story.
yeah,
So it could be, you know, it's interesting that it's, you know, a way of maybe if you really nail your structure down as a writer, as a screenwriter, you get less kind of tinkers and, you know, maybe sort of less people coming in later to sort of rewrite what you're doing and that sort of thing. So I think
yeah,
having that kind of awareness of structure is really good as a screenwriter in terms of films and how they work and how those narratives play out generally in film. And I
yeah,
guess that's just about watching movies, listening to kind of screenwriting podcasts, reading some books, but
mm,
really it's just about like watching films, isn't it? And sort of familiarizing yourself with how film narratives work. And the more kind of familiar you are, you know, that sort of structural awareness, I guess, will just inevitably kind of come, right? You just have
yeah.
an inherent kind of understanding of it that you can riff off of.
Yeah, absolutely. I wholeheartedly agree with that. I think the more you study film, the more you read scripts, the more you watch films with a critical eye. I mean, we can all watch films to enjoy them, but you know, it takes a little bit extra to kind of sit and watch and kind of unpack a film while you're watching it. It
Mm.
maybe takes a little bit of the enjoyment out of it. So maybe on the second watch or the
Yeah,
third, you know,
second or
it's
third
good
watch,
to do
right?
that. But yeah, so it's definitely approaching film watching with a kind of analytical screenwriter's eye is a very good way to kind of learn theme and like we do, just read scripts and then just kind of take them apart and unpack them. And
Yeah,
you know that I've learned so much just by kind of really deep diving into these films and into these scripts that we've been looking at. You know, it's taught me a ridiculous amount about how how plot is structured, you know, how things work, and just like little tricks that writers can utilize in their work. You know, I
yeah,
think
yeah.
you just keep learning, you know, keep learning, keep studying, keep reading, keep writing, and That's all you can do at the end of the day.
Absolutely, yeah, and obviously, sort of keep enjoying what you're doing. I think
Absolutely, yeah.
it's a really sort of great thing is that the more you watch and the more you learn and the more you familiarize and the more you sort of ingest these things like structure or like themes, and the more you are able to have a really good foundation to build from. And the more you're able to then go in and consciously try and subvert some of these things, particularly in
Yeah.
a genre like horror, which has a certain number of tropes and a certain amount of craft in terms of how you build scares and how you build
Mhm.
tension. Being able to kind of go in and then being really familiar with that, and then being able to go in and sort of subvert that in some way, or make things a little bit different or a little bit surprising. I think a lot of that is just about literacy and familiarity, and like you like you do, Lee, like watching 10 million 10 million horror movies and just really
Mm.
kind of understanding the genre. I think that's a
Yeah.
really important thing to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, if you've got a niche, play up to that niche, It's
Yeah, so that was really cool. So that was it, folks. That was our interview with Brett Pierce, obviously co-writer and director of The Wretched. Can't say enough nice things about Brett. I mean, he was so lovely to chat to and so generous with his time. And thanks
absolutely.
so much, Lee, for sorting that out. You did a
Ah,
grand
it's my
job
pleasure.
with us
Like I
there.
said, both Brett and Andrew are just absolutely cracking lads. Like I said, I've said before, every time I've kind of reached out for them for help or advice, or just their point of view or something, they've always been absolute bosses. They've
Yeah,
they've just been always more than happy to help. So I can't
yeah,
say enough nice things about them. If you haven't seen The Wretched yet, go just pick it up, check it out. You'll love it. And when The Wretched Devours comes out, hopefully at the cinema next year, just get those tickets, get in there, and let's try and make it as big a hit as we can, because it will undoubtedly deserve it.
absolutely. Absolutely. So, yeah, that was it, folks. Hope you enjoyed that. And we will hopefully do a bit more of this in the future. If you wanted to reach out to us, we would love to hear from you. If you have any suggestions or any comments or any thoughts, always happy to hear from you. You can get us through our website. That is www.scripttoscreampodcast.com. And of course, we are available on I say all, most of the social media channels. So you can reach out to us there as well. We are on YouTube as well. If you fancy listening to us on YouTube, there's no visuals there, Lee, at the moment. So just a sort of placeholder, but you can certainly
Yeah.
listen to us there.
Well, I have a face for radio, so that's a good thing, people. Trust me.
Oh, you and me both, brother. You and me both. Okay. Hope you enjoyed that, guys. We will see you soon for our next episode. That will be coming very soon. Do we have any thoughts on what that is, Lee?
Our next episode will be Cobweb. We're going to be taking a real close look at the Chris Devlin written movie Cobweb with Anthony Starr and Lizzie Kaplan, and it is a fantastically gruesome modern fairy tale, and the script is just out of this world good. So I'm pretty sure you all are going to like that. If you haven't seen the film, check it out beforehand if you can. If not, just wait on in with us, and we'll take you through the whole thing, spoilers and all.
Absolutely fantastic. Wonderful. Looking forward to that. Okay, so we will see you soon. And as always, do take care.
Don't fear that vomit draft, and keep on writing those scares, people. Take care.